Hello everybody, Joe the Lawyer here, and thanks for watching. Hey guys, so recently I released a big video. It was pretty big, like 3.5 hours, and it was my deep dive into all aspects of the OSR, like every aspect of it, every little part of it. And it's gotten a great reception, but I realized that, 3.5 hours is pretty big for most people to sit there, even though it's broken up into chapters. So I had an idea, maybe I'll just put this out in pieces. That each main part has a separate piece, and that way people can sort of digest it at their own pace. I don't have to worry about listening to a big long video, essentially. And by listen, I mean because I just talk and show these cool black and white art pictures from old school D&D, so I don't have to watch or anything. But I thought it might be a good idea because there's a lot of people recently who got into the OSR, or were looking to get into the OSR, and they came from a 5e experience, and maybe they watched some YouTubers like Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, GDD, and and that's their experience, and they're hearing about this OSR thing from the sidelines, and they're like, what is it? I want to check it out. And so basically, I figured let me do this big video, and now I'm breaking it up into pieces for you. So. You're going to hear a lot of references to things, boards or blogs or links to this or that, and maybe references to products. I have a link page for everything I talk about, so you guys don't have to take notes at all or anything like that. All right, so just click. The link page is included in the description here, as well as a link to the big video if you want to just listen to this thing all the way through. I'm dropping it in like 13 chunks, I think it'll be. So feel free to take a look at that. And one really important thing, guys, is I got a little contest going with Eric Tankar. Whoever gets to 5,000 subs first, the other guy, the other guys got to buy a steak dinner and donate $100 to their favorite charity. So I definitely want to win a steak dinner because I'm doing the Atkins diet, damn it, and I like steak. So anyway, guys, if you could like and subscribe and share it around, I really appreciate it. That would go a long way toward helping me beat them. I would really appreciate that. So without further ado, enjoy the video, guys. All right, guys. OSR resources everybody should have. This is going to be maybe a longer one than even the intro. I'm just looking at the list here. There's almost 40 things I'm going to go over. I'll go over them briefly, touch base on them, maybe a minute each, and describe what they are and what they're all about. All right, and this pretty much in no certain order except for the very first one, because I mentioned earlier, all right, this is something you got to have on your shelf, whether PDF or bookshelf or whatever it is. You got to have this book. Number one, AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. Words of wisdom from the master himself, the Dungeon Master Gary Gygax, all right? The organization, it's kind of funny, but once you realize that it's organized exactly the same way, chapter for chapter, as the player's handbook, then you realize, okay, this is why it's organized. So chapter 1 relates to chapter 1 into PHB, right? So he gives you his ideas, his interpretation. It's basically he's shooting a shit with the typewriter about everything they ever wanted to shoot a shit with Gary about. All right. And so you're going to pick up a lot of information, a lot of wisdom. It's one of those books that you'll read, a paragraph or something 5 times. And then on the 6th time, oh my God, wait, that's something I never saw before. It's one of those kinds of books. That's why I call it the ultimate shit-terial book, the ultimate book to read while taking a shit. All right. So you're going to get forever. I could pull that book open now, spend 10 minutes reading it, and learn something from it that I never thought of, read, or understood before. So it's timeless, all right? Timeless. Next, Tome of Adventure Design. This is by Matt Finch. He just came out with the 2nd edition of it. It's a hardcover book. The back of the book tables of, what's in a room, what's, dungeon creation ideas for what's on the level, who to fight. Everything that you could possibly randomize when creating a dungeon adventure, whatever it is, you can use that book to do. And this latest edition, he came up with a bunch of, what he did was, I forget the name of the concept, but on the borders of the book, he writes just random words that all relate to something interesting, like thousands of different words in various orders and arrangements all along the side. So you're subliminally taking them in, and it might inspire you in a way you don't even know you're being inspired by. Don't worry, it's not subliminally trying to get you to buy all his stuff or give you all his money, but it's an excellent book. I know Tim Shorts uses it religiously to roll up. You just roll up things. I'm in a log jam here. What am I going to do? I have a writer's block. What should I create now? Well, let me get the Toad, T-O-A-D, Tome of Adventure Design. Grind a table as appropriate, roll D100, and just pick something. Or, I use it sometimes to just scan for ideas. I pick stuff. I never do a random roll on my designing of things. I'll just pick stuff. Say, that looks like a cool thing. Honorable mention is the next thing. The 30 Sandbox Companion. It's a D30 random table book of a lot of things that Tome of Adventure Design covers. Get it in PDF, I believe. I don't think you get a print copy, but I have a PDF. It's pretty good too. It's you can print that up and take it with you on the road. Whereas Tome of Adventure Design is going to be, a part of your bulletproof vest. It's that thick, right? So next, Dungeon Alphabet. This is by Goodman Games. This was all the rage back in the day, and it's still, I don't know, on their 5th printing now or something. It's a fantastic book. It's like, A is for apple, B is for boy, blah, blah, blah. A is for altar, B is for, I don't know, whatever the fuck, right? And then you see altar, and there's a random table of 20 things, or, multiple tables that this altar has, roll a dice, dark, roll another die, and it's filled with a bowl of water, and another die, and it's an altar to so-and-so, another die. It's if you touch it with your right hand, you transport to the plane of Orcus, stuff like that. So each letter is for a certain thing. S is for statues, stuff like that. And if you want to throw a statue in, boom, pull out the S. S is for statues, roll up something. It's a random generation thing. So it's a thin little book, but well worth it, okay? Next, how to make a fantasy sandbox. This is the thing I mentioned in the other video, earlier in this video, by Rob Connolly. I edited this thing, so I'm a little bit biased, but I gotta say, honest to God, there's very few things that I've read that I feel made me a better DM. This is one of them. I mean, Rob and I think alike. There's something to be said for, like, we think along the same wavelengths, but he's been thinking about this shit much, much longer than I have. He said he has like a 40-year campaign going on. Literally 40-year campaign, and you get new players and new PCs, but the world develops, the campaign develops, 40 fucking years. And he's learned a lot and how to run a fantasy sandbox campaign, and it's all right there in that book. All right. Next, of course, Black Marsh. I mentioned that earlier too. It's his setting. All right. That will be a part of his official setting, but right now Black Marsh is there and it's free. It's free. Pick it up. You'll see how to make a fantasy sandbox in action through Black Marsh. Okay. Next, Stronghold Builder's Guidebook, and you're thinking, huh? This is a what? This doesn't make sense. Isn't that a book that came out for 3rd edition? Well, yes, it is, boys and girls. It's perhaps the only good 3rd edition book that Wizards of the Coast, or one of the very few that they ever put out that's any good. It's basically how to build different structures, strongholds, castles, keeps, buildings, whatever it is. It has costs associated. It has what it's going to take, what comes with it. I've used that in every campaign, no matter what system. It's worth it. The least you would have to do is, maybe if your currency is Monty Hall or cheap, you might have to adjust what things cost, but that's easily done. It's a great book for that purpose. Okay. Next, Swords and Wizardry has a book, Mythmere Games rather, for Swords and Wizardry, called City Encounters. It's a book of what you might encounter in a city. Literally, that's all it is. It's a book of city encounters. Tim Shorts turned me on to this book, as so many others. He's like a good resource. Hey, you ever heard of this book, Joe? I'm like, no, what is it? Boom, 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 I buy it. Inevitably, it's always good. If he's recommended it, it's always good. And it's a great book. Just, what might you encounter in a city? Here's a random table, for various things that might happen. Get that book and you'll enjoy it. Okay. Next, this is interesting because I literally just came across this book for the very first time while at ShireCon. All right, it's the AD&D 2nd edition campaign source book and catacomb guide. It was a ridiculous name because there's not a goddamn thing in there about catacombs at all. I don't know why they called it the catacomb guide, but it's a campaign source book, and you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? Honestly, I read about this recently. What it comes down to is when AD&D 2nd edition came out with a DM guide, they said there's a lot of ways to become a great DM, but we're not going to teach any of that shit. We're just going to give you the tools and tables and how to run the game, and not teach you how to be a great DM. And so I guess there was probably 100 pages or whatever written for this, but they never made it to the book. And so later on they said, oh, you know what? We got these 100 pages here. Let's it's a no-brainer. Let's dump it into something else. And they came out with the campaign source book and catacomb guide. No catacombs, but it's basically how to be a DM written in the 2nd edition era. And I've skimmed it. I've read a couple paragraphs, and it's one of those books I want to sit down and just, with a deck and a beer, on the back deck, and just digest this thing, because it's really, really good. It's an excellent resource. Okay. One of the other few things that Wizards, or TSR, I think definitely back in the day, put out, the Aurora's Whole Realms catalog. Now, any old hippies back in the day, you know what I'm talking about when I say the Whole Earth catalog. It was how to live off the grid. It was a catalog of catalogs. It was, if you want to live the hippie lifestyle, live off the grid and self-sufficiency, or whatever other things. It was a kind of a random catalog that went through various editions and iterations. I have a copy, 2 copies on my shelf right now. It's kind of neat. It's like if you want to, it was a list of things that you could maybe buy, all right? And so Aurora's Whole Realms catalog took that same style and basically said, okay, Aurora, the merchant of Waterdeep, I think it was, this is her catalog, as if she had printed catalogs, like the Sears Roebuck catalog from back in the day. Here's what you can buy and how much. And she sells it at her store or on the road in her caravan. And you get an idea. There's so many cool products in there that you can have your players buy. I mean, that you would not randomly ever think of. Well worth it. Well worth it. Okay. Next, we're going to get to a couple monster books, because honestly, you can never have enough monster books. But there are 3 in particular that are right behind me right now within arm's reach all the time that I think are fantastic. 1, Tome of Horrors Complete. There is many Tome of Horrors. The Tome of Horrors Complete for Swords and Wizardry is the compilation of all the best of all of them. And that's a Frog God Games thing. You can pick that up right now from Frog God. Okay, the link is on the link page. Next, Tome of Beasts from Kobold Press. There were other Tome of Beast books, but the one from Kobold, the very first one, I think was the best. The other ones, not worth it. Tome of Beast, the first one, was very, very good. Okay. Next, Monstrosities for Swords and Wizardry. That was a Matt Finch book. You could only get it on Amazon from what I've seen. That's where I got mine. Again, Tim Short's reference. He loves, you cannot, if you put a book in front of Tim Short's, he will buy it if it's a monster book. So he has everyone ever published. So that was excellent. Another Tim Short's reference. Goods and Gear by Kenzer and Company. It's on drive-through. It's the ultimate adventure gear book that adventurers might buy. I mean, from you want to buy a Byzantine helmet, here's the price, and here's what it does. It's stunning, the level of detail that went into this thing. Stunning. I can't describe it. This is the ultimate gear book. Every campaign could use this book. Okay. Another one every campaign could use is A Magical Medieval Society, Western Europe. It is an awesome look at actual authentic Western Europe societies and how would they be, how they organize, how they arrange, the manor system and all that stuff, merchants and trades and all that. And basically a magical medieval society. They threw a layer of magic on it and said, this is how it would act, this is how it would work. So the 3rd edition is out now. Along with that, from the same folks, you're definitely going to want to get Silk Road, which is about, trade on the Silk Road in our times, but you could always use that for any campaign. And then Ecology and Culture. Magical Society, Ecology and Culture. For all the world builders out there, that's a vital book. All right, they're right up there with Rob's book. All right, now, a new one. Damn you, Tim, you turned me on to these, and I'm stuck in this cycle of buying them all. 2 Kickstarters have finished, and the 3rd one has just started. The first 2, the Herbalist's Primer and the Geologist's Primer by Renegade Game Studios. It's basically a list of all the herbs and all the rocks and minerals and what they're good for, what they're used for, and then they drop it and say, in a fantasy game, here's what you could do with them. Boom. The one they're kickstarting right now, which is live at the time of this video, is the Mycologist's Primer for mushrooms. I can't wait, because I'm always looking for a table of random mushrooms. Like, you eat this mushroom that you found in the woods. What happens? We all want to have the magical mushroom experience in our game for our players to have to deal with, right? So I can't wait till that book comes out. They take a little long to fulfill, but Jesus Christ, are they worth it. The reproduction values on these things are amazing, okay? Now, this is going to be costly. This is something I've always wanted. I wanted to buy them back when I was a kid, but I could never afford them. The various spell compendiums. There's a priest spell compendium, a wizard spell compendium, and something called the Encyclopedia Magica. TSR put them out. I think the priest is 3 volumes, the wizard is 4, and the Encyclopedia Magica, as I turn behind me to look, is 4 volumes. It's essentially it was printed in the late 90s, and some lunatic decided they're going to task somebody with going through everything TSR has ever published. And if it was a priest spell, it goes into this book and it's alphabetized. If it was a wizard spell, it goes into the other 4 books, alphabetized. If it was a magic item, it goes into Encyclopedia Magica, alphabetized. And also by category for the Encyclopedia Magica. There were banners. There were dozens and dozens of magical banners I never even heard of. I don't know what obscure fucking module they were put in, but boom, banners if you want them. Like little things like that. So amazing source of reference. I use them all the time. Tim got me one because I told him I always wanted to buy them, but I couldn't afford it or whatever. So I think he sent me the Wizard ones, which were costly, and I appreciate it because I edited his book, his Kickstarter. So he sent me those as a gift because I didn't want to get paid because I'm not an official real editor, you know. So he sent me those as a gift. And I thanked him and cursed him because my OCD requires me to now buy all 4 priest compendiums and buy all 3 priest compendiums and all 4 Encyclopedia Magica compendiums. So his gift cost me like $800 or $900, motherfucker. So appreciate it, but you son of a bitch. All right, now I touched on this book way earlier in this show, Thieves of Lankhmar by Nigel Finley. It was a book that was put out by TSR related to the Lankhmar setting, and if you ever wanted to understand how to run a thieves guild, how to organize a heist, it is the best book I've ever seen on that. Well worth it. It's my go-to book to this day for all things thievery. It's system neutral. It doesn't matter. And if you want another book related to thieves that's awesome, remember back in 2nd edition there were all these handbooks: the Fighter's Handbook, the Thieves Handbook, the Ranger's Handbook. The only one that was worth any shit at all was the Thieves Handbook, the 2nd edition Thieves Handbook, and it was really pretty much solely because it had the list of thieves' tools and gadgets that you could use. They were all fun, like you buy things that help you climb, things that you blacken your skin so that you get a bonus to hide in shadows, things like that. And so there was a great book for that sort of a thing, right? One that Tim, I ran over this list with Tim on the phone, and he says, "Oh, you're missing one thing that's really awesome. The Shady Dragon Inn." It was a great resource because it had a map of an inn, you could lay it on the table, and had a whole list of NPCs that you might encounter at this inn. So you can use this in any campaign, any system, anywhere. Stats be damned, it doesn't really matter, okay? Now, one good thing, remember I said there's very few things that I've ever bought that I thought were actually great and actually helped me. We're coming up on 3 of them right now. The first of those 3 is called Arbiter of Worlds. It's actually a book. It's not an RPG book. It's a book you get on Amazon, written by Alexander Macris. He's the guy who wrote Axe, Adventurer, Conqueror, King. And this guy, myself, and Rob Connolly all think the same way in terms of realism in the world and how to build that real world and how to immerse your characters in that real world. And it's an amazing book. And he's incorporated all this stuff into his Axe game as well. So he has a whole video series. I didn't link to it here, but you could check it out. Alexander Macris, Arbiter of Worlds. He really goes over each chapter of the book in great detail and interprets it for you. So it's well worth it. All right. Now, Sly Flourish has a book called Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. This is one of the other ones that I said, you know what, I've learned something here, because it also it tells you how to prep for your games. And it's a great, simple, good book to how to prep for game sessions. I'm notorious for over-prepping. And this guy gets into the nitty-gritty of what to do and how to do it. And that way you're always, just a little bit ahead. And it fits along the same way I think, but it's like he got into my brain and articulated the way I think and made me understand how I think so that I could get better at how I think of those things. If that makes any fucking sense. So another one that was a great one is a book by Goodman Games called How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck. Now, here's the thing. There was an original one that he wrote, or somebody wrote. I think Goodman himself wrote this. It's like 32 pages long. It's a series of essays by various authors and also by Goodman himself talking about what he looks for in an adventure module. I think it was originally like, if you want to submit adventures to Goodman Games for publication, know these things. This is what I'm looking for. And he got some other people to write some other essays that talk about various aspects of how to publish adventures. It was so popular, the original 32-page one, that he later put out a big, thick hardcover book. Now, the big, thick hardcover book sucks. I got to say it. It sucks. It's terrible. And the problem is that if you buy the thick hardcover book, you get the original 32-page book for free. Now, that's the only way that I could find to get the original 32-page book. That's it. I can't find it anywhere else unless the PDF fairy delivers it to you, if you know what I mean. So, but get the original 32-page How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck. Ironically, the book on that sucks. Lighter book, so who knew? Another one here, as you hear the sounds ruffling, I'm pulling these books up and I'm looking at them. It's called Bestial Ecosystems by Courtney Campbell. Remember, he was one of the ones I sat with James Radji and just shot the shit with the whole, for hours in North Texas that year. We all took a cab back, or a Uber back together to the con, too. A tiny Uber, and none of us are small people. It was quite interesting, fitting in that Uber. Anyway, it's a hard-to-describe book, but Bestial Ecosystems, right? Like, if you look up, I'm pulling it out now, it's like he picks monsters, a whole shit ton of monsters, classic D&D monsters. Like I'm looking at Dragon Turtle. All right, he gives it nomenclature, different ways to describe them: shell beasts, living islands, sea dragons, blah blah blah. He gives a description. He gives you things that are known about them. Giant turtles that live on the sea. And then he gives you rumors and other things related to them. All right, some are so large that their shells are mistaken for islands. They very much enjoy the taste of salt. They often suckle on salty boulders or anchors of shipwrecks to satisfy their cravings. When agitated or defending a territory, they can spit these heavy objects from their maw at high speeds and cause tremendous damage. Little things like that maybe not make the rule books at all, but they give you so much fun flavor you could mess with in your game, to mess with your PCs with, because, what's more fun than messing with your PCs, right? And so this is definitely a great book. You're going to have merfolk in there, you're going to have nixies in there, you're going to have salamanders or rust monsters in there. Read this book. It gives you a lot of cool little things that you could do to mix it up. It's not, oh, here we go, rust monster encounter, got to do X, Y, Z. No, you give the Courtney Campbell flavor and boom, it's a whole different kind of rust monster, right? So excellent book. Now, here's a cool thing. The Pirate's Guide to Freeport. Now, Freeport, the modules that Green Ronin Games and Chris Promise of Green Ronin Games put out back in the 3rd edition days, the famous modules that were really fun, set in a pirate kind of a thing. He later created this setting called Freeport, where everything was based, and he made this book called The Pirate's Guide to Freeport. I have 2 copies. One because one of them I got had a little problem with the binding, and I let them know, and I sent them a picture, and they sent me a free one. So that goes let you know they're good people. But this book is it's a pirate island, and it's a tiny bit gonzo, but not so. And I don't like gonzo generally, but tiny bit gonzo, but not enough to kill it. And it's just a very detailed description of a pirate island, the internal politics, who's who, and it's a big thick book, right? And there's so much detail, so much things you could set an entire campaign there if you wanted to. Definitely going to be the basis of any pirate campaign I ever run. And it's the fun part about it was that there's no stat blocks, none. It's all fluff, no crunch, all setting. So definitely going to have fun with that. Speaking of setting, the Troll Lord guys, they put out, Castles and Crusades game. They came out with a bunch of codex books for world building. They have a resource book. It's all text, no crunch, for various real life human cultures throughout time. Like one set in Asia, one of them for Nordic times, one of them Germanic. They have one for everything you can imagine. They're still putting out more today. They're really good books. You can get the PDFs on a good deal, and every once in a while they have a sale. Buy all of them at one time, all the hardcovers, and boom, you get them all at once for really cheap. I think I bought like 6 for $100 or something one time on a sale. Well fucking worth it. Okay. Speaking of cultures, Tim tell me add this because I never played GURPS, so he and Rob played GURPS for a long time. And he's talking about, and I linked to a Noble Knight game here because GURPS put out a lot of books on history and culture, so much so that on Noble Knight they have their own category. The GURPS 1st through 3rd edition history and culture books. Every cultural group, every historical setting, whatever it is you want to know. Mesopotamia, boom, there's a book for it. Japan, there's a book for it, right? You're good to go. Scandinavia, book for it. The Vikings, you're good for it. Everything that you want to know is there. So just like the Castles and Crusades folks, the Troll Lords put out their codex books. Same thing here, culture books. Okay. Now, going something a little bit different here. I'm going to throw in Call of Cthulhu. All right. I think every old schooler should definitely have and play at least once Call of Cthulhu. It's a fun game. You're going to go insane and die, and you'll never win, but it doesn't matter. It's a fun game, and you should do it because every D&D game should always have some horror elements. Even if the campaign is not a horror campaign, every once in a while there should be some horror elements. Like Lamentations of the Flame Princess focuses on horror. You will learn how to run horror games by reading Call of Cthulhu. Now, most old schoolers agree that the 5th edition is the best. I linked to the 7th edition book here. You can probably pick up the 5th edition anywhere you want. It's online wherever, pick up Noble Knight or whatever, but PDF, something like that. But yeah, definitely get it and take a look at it. And it's worth it just once to read it and play through it and just have a fun time because it'll help your D&D game if you play Call of Cthulhu. All right. Something related to that, Trail of Cthulhu. Now this is a Cthulhu kind of a game, but it uses the Gumshoe system, which is a detective system. The Gumshoe detective system is a merger between that and Call of Cthulhu called Trail of Cthulhu. It's put out by Pellegrin Press, and the whole thing about the Gumshoe system is that the hard part is not getting the clues like Call of Cthulhu is. It's about clue interpretation. So if you got this whole set of clues, what do you do with it, right? You're going to get them. If you do the right thing, you're going to get the clues. then you got to figure out what the hell are you going to do with it. That's the joy, the beauty. So if you're going to run a detective game, which I've done some mystery detective kind of games in my, especially in a city or something like that, I used the gumshoe system. I ported it into my 5th edition game in my own way, and boom, I was able to use Trail of Cthulhu and the gumshoe system to help interpret some clues, and run a good detective game. They had a good time. All right. Now, Troll Lords, Castles and Crusades came out with a book called Yigsburg. Remember I talked about that a long time ago as a setting book that Gary Gygax wanted to put out there as a clone, I guess you could say, for his Greyhawk City. Well, Yigsburg is that book, and because they got the rights to publish it again, there's a new edition out there. So you're no longer paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for the limited edition book that I have on my shelf. They got to publish the Yigsburg book again, and you could pick it up the reprints, okay? Now, back to Raji, the creature guy, the scary creature guy. Raji, I think one of his very first things he ever published, and it was under Goodman Games, but he now has the rights back and he's publishing it under his own store, was the Random Esoteric Creature Generator. It's basically a list of tables, like of how to develop monsters. So you know how the Tome of Adventure Design is for developing dungeons and whatnot. This will help you develop monsters. From every various aspect of a monster you possibly could have. Does it have a poisonous stinger? Does it have claws? Does it have a beak? Whatever it is, and you can make your own horrible compilation monster, whatever you want. And it's really good for that purpose. Okay. And last but not least, almost last but not least, I got one more after this. Goodman's Ultimate Traps. So back in the day, these Grimtooth's Ultimate Traps. Grimtooth back in the day was put out some trap books, I believe, for Judges Guild, I believe it was, and now he basically republished all these various nefarious trap books into one, the Ultimate Traps. Goodman is recently putting out a one of their old school adventures revisited or whatever series. There, I think number 8 is the Grimtooth Trap book. I have the Ultimate Trap book, which you can get on Noble Knight. Once their Kickstarter, I believe, is finished, once they publish that, you could also buy that copy as well. Okay, and last but not least, and I'm only putting this book here because as sort of a placeholder and a representation of what else you can do. There's a book that's called Folklore, Mythology, and Legend. Many years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I asked people, what book do you have on your bookshelf that's indispensable as a DM that may not be an RPG book? And this book came up more than once, way more than once. It's an encyclopedia on folklore, mythology, and legend. It's a big-ass thick book. It's a heavy book, and it's every type of mythology, every type of legend, everything from everywhere, all around the world is in there. Shit I never heard of before. It's basically it's basically a college level book. I don't know what it's used for, but it's in colleges, but it could be. It's a college level book. It's an exhaustive list of everything you could have. Now, I'm only putting this in there as a placeholder because there's so many other books. I mean, I'm looking back. William Butler Yeats put out a book called Irish Fairy Tales and Folklore, W.B. Yeats, right? Because he was big into that. So here's a book, boom, on my shelf for that. I'm just putting this out there because I wanted to let you guys know you don't have to just get D&D books and put them on your bookshelf, right? All RPG books are not the only references for RPG games. You should and could go out there. When I was running a Bronze Age game, I spent hundreds of dollars on Bronze Age books. And I got them right behind me on the shelf. And I read a bunch of them, and they're really good, and they informed me as to what I wanted to do. So don't limit yourself to RPG books only when you're a DM. There's so many other resources out there that are fantastic. Fantastic. Okay? So that sums up every book you should have on your shelf, or OSR resources everybody should have. Now, especially this one. I've asked you before, please let me know if anything else comes to mind. But, please do, especially with this one, because I want to make an ultimate list. I want to make something that people could look at that'll stand the test of time, guys. So anything pops up that you think of, let me know. Next, we're going to get into resources to learn the real history of the hobby. I mean, I talked about the history here a bit, and that's just an overview, half hour long, but I'm talking about hardcore research on the history of the hobby. We're going to get into all that here next, okay?